Nice to meet you all. My name is Asaf. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Alison.ai. I have Bradly with me. Say hi.
Everybody, nice to meet you.
So today we're going to speak about a very, very exciting topic, creatives, and how we look at creatives in a different way, how we use AI to analyze and generate new creative concepts. And Bradly will share a little bit of their experiences with working with Alison at Zynga. And obviously, we'll show you some of the very exciting, innovative things that we do at Alison. So how did we even get started? I'm a marketer myself for 15 years. My parents, as you can see, these are not my real parents, by the way. But my parents are also marketing experts themselves since the 80s. And a few years ago, I had an unorthodox, unconventional chat with my parents about marketing. Not about when I'm having kids, when I'm getting married, but about marketing. And I practically asked them, like, Mom, Dad, back then in the 80s, how did you test? How did you validate marketing campaigns? And they looked at me in a funny, simple way, and they said, it's easy. We A/B test. And I said, there's no way that you A/B test. They said, why not? I said, because today, every single company on earth are still using the same process, A/B test. So they both, you can see in front of you, they both looked at me and they said, Asaf, there must be a better way. Think about it. So I did. So before we jump into the Alison solution and how we really use AI, let's look at what is the creative component within a success or within ROI metrics. So a creative is the main driver for ROI, for generating revenues, return on investment. Actually, 89% of ROI is dedicated or coming directly from creative. Media, only 6%, and brand, 5%. So there's a clear focus on creative, right? We're all speaking about creatives, but how do we really know what's the right creative? What's the right composition? What are the right formations of creative that we should really be using? So the simple answer is that we don't really know. So we're facing a lot of different challenges all along our creative workflows and all along our creative processes. One of the biggest challenges, and Bradly will shed some light around it later on today, but one of the biggest challenges, how do we really tailor our creatives to specific audiences, different users, and different use cases, right? So it's not really easy because it costs a lot of money, it takes a lot of time, and the operations and workflows around it are pretty massive. So we use AI. We use AI to basically unleash the power of creative analysis, unleash the power of what really working, what really resonates within specific audiences and users. Also, you know, we're all seeing tons and tons and tons of creatives every single day. We became blind to those messages. We became blind to those banners we see around us. That's one thing. The other, creatives are getting fatigued very, very, very quickly. Sometimes it takes seconds, sometimes minutes, sometimes days or weeks. How do we challenge? How do we work around this solution? So again, we use AI. And we use AI in a very simple, very genius way to kind of cut the middlemans and go straight to the marketing metrics. There's another thing around creatives, right? How do we make creative personalized? As I said, we're all exposed to hundreds of different creatives, probably on a daily or a weekly basis. But how do we as brands, how do we as advertisers, how do we tailor or personalize the creatives to our specific users? So it's a big challenge around it. And more so, there's often a big disconnect between the media and the creative teams. the media teams, they're all around the UA, they're running the operations, they're running the media teams, and they're all about media metrics. But creative teams, not so much, right? They're about art and what would resonate, what looks good, what fits the brand guidelines, style, tone. It's a completely different set of skills and it's a completely different mindset. So how do we bridge this gap between media teams and marketing teams? You guessed correctly, we use AI. So I want to share some of our recent findings when looking at over 2 million different videos and 2 million different creatives in the past year. And we found a lot of different things that are very exciting, right? One of them is that storytelling, telling a story, not just delivering messages, telling a story, it's highly important. And the way we emphasize, the way we highlight the story, again, for specific users and specific audiences, that's gold, right? That's the most impactful mission that an advertiser could set to themselves. But again, how do we really do that? How do we visualize the story? How do we visualize the storytelling to specific audiences, users, different placements? What works on TikTok won't work on Facebook, and what works on Snapchat won't work on other display networks, right? So how do we really understand storytelling? AI helps us understand the story behind the message, the story behind the video itself. So we looked at a few different verticals. One of them, obviously, is gaming. And we saw that in 32% of gaming videos, what actually drives revenues, what actually drives return on investment is celebrity endorsements, using celebrity in the video ads. The second thing is user-generated content. This is massively popular right now. Everyone are using a lot of different user-generated content, and we'll show you some examples later on how to do it correctly, specifically for gaming, for the gaming vertical. And I think the last thing, which is the most important thing for gaming vertical, is interactive, right? Don't just show just a simple game. Don't just show us or us users how to play the game. Let's make it interactive. Let's make a story out of the gameplay itself. We also looked at education apps, and we saw that what's really working in terms of conversions, generating revenues, user engagement, is actually bite-sized learning. Give us a sample of how it would look to use the app, to use the education process before we actually use it. Second, and again, we're going back to gaming, gamification. Help us as users, interact and play with the education app instead of just learning. Learning is boring. Gaming is fun. If you combine the two, you get a satisfied, engaged user. And last thing is professionalism, right? When we look at education, we want to look at it as a source of authority. We want to make sure that it's a professional app or it's a professional platform we're engaged with. Entertainment. I'll make it short. Humor, behind the scenes, and high production values, these are the main drivers for revenues, conversions, and return on investments when it comes to entertainment apps. Utility apps. Now, this was something we didn't really expect, in a way. Having explainer videos and user testimonials in utility apps, it's maybe the obvious thing, but not when it comes to videos. How do we make a video that for a utility app that has a user-generated content with testimonials and explainers? So we had, and you'll see this in a second, we had to come up with the right marketing briefs and the right guidelines for our UGC content, for our influencers and the users that are generating the content, so they can really explain the interaction and the experience. Health and fitness. So again, first thing I want to mention is personalization. We all want to feel that is our the ad, the app speaks directly to us. We want to feel that we're a part of this health movement. So personalization, super important. And again, our AI really helps us not just personalize, but hyper-personalized creative to specific users and audiences. Emotional appeals and wearable integration. This is how we really interact with health and fitness apps. We all wear those wearable devices, IoT, all around health. We want to make sure that we're capitalizing on the wearables that we use. So this was about the verticals. Now what about the networks? The differences between the networks are huge, huge. As I said earlier, what's working on Facebook probably will not be working for TikTok. And what's working for TikTok will not be working for YouTube. So how do we find the right nuances? How do we personalize our video ads, not just for the type of users, not just for the audiences and segments, but for the actual platforms? So what we saw, and again, analyzing more than 2 million videos in the past year, we saw that YouTube has a lot of different interactive ads. Interactive ads on YouTube are generating 32% of user engagement, and micro ads on YouTube are lifting or generating uplift for brand awareness compared to long form videos. And also, you'll see this all around, all through the presentation, personalization, right? Personalization lifted the purchase rate by 46%. I know, there's still a challenge. How do we personalize? We'll get them in a second. Facebook, short form videos, reels, and video polls. These are the main things that are driving or creating uplift within ROI, engagement, and performance. And these are highly, highly important because again, you'll see the differences between the platforms. TikTok, hashtag challenges, branded effect, and humor and entertainment. Look, 43% uplift in brand awareness, 51% uplift in view rates, and 47% uplift in engagement. Just by incorporating those features and those elements within the videos, within the creatives, understanding what resonates better within TikTok and opposed to the other platforms. And also, all of us are either iOS or Android users. We think we're the same, but not really. So we see that on iOS, for example, CTAs interact differently. On Android, landscape versus portrait also interacts differently. So it's very important to take all those considerations in mind when creating new videos, new creative ads with hyper-personalized content. And we're getting into Alison. How do we really, really do that? So in a way, or the first mission that we set to ourselves is goodbye guesswork. Goodbye A/B test. We don't really have to A/B test because we can use AI. And because we use AI, we don't have to produce so many creatives that would be redundant throughout the process. We don't need to dedicate testing budgets to each one of the versions, and we don't need to wait so much time until we get an actual response of a winner of the A/B test from the platforms themselves. So how do we do that? So as I said earlier, our AI-generated creatives are tailored for user engagement and user behavior uplifts. We can basically personalize in real time, not just the data that we use, but also the creatives that we generate. We augment the entire workflow from the analysis to competitive intelligence to driving insights. And then how do we take those insights, those learnings, those explorations, and we really bring them to life? So you'll see some examples from our platform, but Bradly will also share some of their examples at Zynga using the Alison platform. So basically, we reduce costs by at least 50%, all production costs, testing costs, etc. And we increase performance by at least 180% just by taking this workflow and completely augmenting it. And again, continuous optimization. It's not enough just to look at creatives once, optimize, and that's it. We have to feed this feedback loop over and over again and make sure that we're optimizing, again, for the right video content, with the right audiences, the right messages, what really resonates with the different users. You ready for this?
Sure. Thanks, Asaf, and thanks everybody for being here. My name is Bradley. I am a senior creative director in the performance marketing organization at Zynga. And a quick briefing on Zynga. Most of you probably know who we are, but founded in 2007, headquartered in San Mateo. We have offices all over and offices and studios all over the world. And yeah, I am fortunate to be able to work on some of these titles in this portfolio, inclusive of like beloved mobile franchises, some more recent casual and mid-core hits, and of course, you know, these beloved entertainment IP installments. Yeah, next slide, please, Asaf. And so a little bit about my personal journey in terms of creative and performance. I've been focusing on optimizing and doing strategy for performance creative all along the funnel, from the upper funnel for UA and down to ASO and the storefronts since 2011. Between then and now, I've done stints at Glue and Kabam, and I'm now at Zynga. I've been fortunate to be here, and then throughout that 7 years, I've been really fortunate enough to, you know, have the opportunity to take advantage of the Alison.ai platform. Yeah, and I'm going to talk a little bit about, before I get into the Alison stuff, I want to give a little bit of insight and perspective on how we think about creative. So first of all, I think what's really important to understand is that, you know, UA and performance creative is still advertising, right? And advertising is still communication, right? And so you need to know what you're saying, and important to what Asaf was saying about personalization, who you're speaking to, right? And so your creative intention and knowing what you are saying and what your advertisement is supposed to do, cataloging that and having a framework, AKA a taxonomy, for how you categorize those elements of your communication and put them together is really kind of important, you know, regardless of kind of platforms, right? Sorry, can you go back one slide? Sorry about that. No, go ahead. If you don't, I get my hands full. So yeah, communication first, and you know, really at the highest level possible, what you're trying to do is match your product relevance with some audience and lifestyle relevance, right? Performance doesn't necessarily, it's my belief that performance doesn't necessarily live in the asset that you're creating, but it's in the audience whose behavior you're trying to change, right? And trying to get them, to persuade them to change their behavior and download a game, right? For instance, right? And so I think tailoring creatives to your audience and what they would like to hear, and kind of having, you know, and having a sense that like, oh wow, I have motivations to want to play X, Y, Z games. Make sure that your ads are kind of addressing those motivations. And so, like I was saying before, a motivations and player first kind of taxonomy to categorize your creative intention is really important, regardless of anything else. And so, just wanted to share that, and we can move on. And as far as like making sure that you are achieving some efficiency in your creative workflows, because we all know like creative is kind of like hard to produce. You need people, you need budget, and you need kind of time, right? Those are all like sometimes in scant supply, right? But what can really help you out here is the 80-20 rule, right? And you know, we know that like 80% of what you create is probably not going to scale, right? It's not because the ad wasn't good enough or it didn't do the right things. It's just that there's algorithms on every channel, right? For every partner and platform that you're going to put ads on, there's algorithms there that kind of favor one creative over another, or a few creatives over others. And so you really have to understand that 80% of what you make is probably not going to work, but 20% of it is. And so, right, balancing that is really a function of 80% of what you make should be following what you know works for you and iterating on those concepts, those communication strategies. And then the other 20% is where you really focus on kind of going outside the box with your ideas, expansive ideas, and trying to kind of break a trend somewhere in the industry, right? If everybody's been paying attention, right, to what's been going on in our industry, it's very much trend driven, right? ads become popular because many people see these ads, and maybe they become a little bit newsworthy, right? In terms of like there being some degree of misleading or whatnot, right? And so yeah, it's really important to kind of like balance that effort, right? With like, okay, 80% of what we do is based on what we know works. The other 20% is trying to discover something new to work for us, right? And then last little bit of insight before we dig into Allison here is that, data and synergizing data with creative action is really kind of important for fueling creative innovation on any creative team, right? And so empowering your creative teams to actually start getting data fluent and getting used to working with data visualizations and seeing those and actually practicing, trying to turn those into creative action is really important. And Allison is a tool that can help bridge that gap in terms of like data fluency and creative acumen and know-how, right? And another piece is that like the metrics that a creative team can kind of be directly influential of are obviously like CTR and IPM, right? Those are the two things that creative teams can directly influence, among other things. But as far as when you apply creative, right, those are the things that you can move. But if you have a platform with which creatives can explore data and have a journey in terms of like understanding and learning more about what their data is saying with respect to like ROAS and retention and those lower funnel or those downstream metrics, this will engage your artists to understanding more about how this is like how their creative has a role in business growth, right? Which is what we're all after. And, Alison.ai is definitely a tool that can help you get there, right? In terms of exposing your creatives to data, giving them the power to see visualizations of data and real-time reporting from the networks, seeing that all in one place and kind of having a platform that can give you recommendations and not just a kind of like, here's your IPM and here's your CVR, now what are you going to do, right? So a little bit of a couple of success stories from our Game of Thrones slots title. As everybody may be aware, it's harder to do UA for IP. It might seem like a golden goose in terms of marketing, not necessarily always the case. And especially in this one where, the overlap objectively between these two audiences, right? The slots audience and a Game of Thrones, super fan, might be a slim overlap there. But I just wanted to share a couple of examples here where these three ads that you're seeing on screen are two new concepts and one top performer optimization, and the results that we saw from taking recommendations directly from Alison.ai, imparting them into our creative workflow and seeing kind of like market results, right? Both at the new concept level and in terms of optimizing existing top performers, right, that are already doing really good scale for you, but optimizing those, continuing to optimizing those, then can kind of like get you deeper and more valuable returns on your investment in that creative. And then I also want to mention. How did you do it though? Like, what is the example? What do you mean? Oh, okay. Sorry. Great question. Can I answer that for you? Yeah. So basically, like, Allison has a data visualization platform as part of it, right? And so Allison will make recommendations like, hey, try X, Y, or Z, right? And in these cases, the first two that you'll see, it was about kind of like our goal, right, was to make ads that were more relevant to the slots audience. And this is talking about personalization, right? Because like I was saying before, that overlap of audiences is pretty slim, right? And so basically these first two new concepts, these were recommendations directly out of the engine, right? You should try live action footage inside a casino, showing your casino, your slots game inside of a real live action slots cabinet, right? And so this was the exact creative recommendation, right? To like, you could see an increase in IPM and in CVR if you try this, right? It's giving you the recommendation for how to structure a concept around personalization, right? And so it's, yeah, and exactly. And I will say that the recommendation for the top performer wasn't necessarily, around getting more ROAS, right? It was probably one of them, but it's more along the lines of having to try multiple things of the recommendations that come out of Allison, and hopefully one will give you a result that you're really happy about, meaning like an increase in ROAS, right? And so that is how it works, right? Without kind of being able to demo the product for you right here and now, right? Allison looks at data, makes recommendations based on that data and your kind of like spend patterns and history, right? And they'll make recommendations in terms of what to do with your creative.
And in a few slides, we'll show you exactly how the platform looks like and how.
Oh no, yeah. There's no, in fact, I should probably mention this, right? Like
Maybe the smart brief is a good.
yeah. So this is great. This is a great segue here because we don't use any generative AI in any of our advertising. Like we're legally not allowed, right? And I get that, right? There's a lot of gray area in terms of rights holder particularities around content that is generative, right? And so basically, Asaf and his team came up with this product adjunct called Smart Brief, right? Which is probably one of the most powerful tools in the kit over there at Allison, and that this is a creative person's like dream, right? To be able to kind of like just input, okay, these are the tags that are working for me. Here is what I want to say. Now give me a brief for something that I can create, right? And while we do not take the imagery and use that imagery like one-to-one in any creatives, what we are given is a concept board, set of storyboards, right, that kind of give you a composition, right, and an idea. And in this case, what Alison.ai gave us was a kind of like make a real-world stand-up slots casino game. That was the recommendation from the Smart Brief, and so we now have that in production. And while I don't know, we don't know yet how that performs. We were confident enough in the recommendations from Smart Brief to actually invest in some production dollars behind this particular idea, right? And so I think, yeah, all I really wanted to say is like the Smart Brief is really a powerful tool for your creative people, in that like maybe they aren't so data savvy, and this is a tool that kind of like can even bridge that gap even faster, right? Of like, okay, I know I want these elements in here, right? Because Allison has told me that these are my top performing tags and elements in my creative. I want them all in here. Now what have you got for me? And it spits you out a storyboard that is executable, right? Like from that moment, right? As long as you have obviously a team and resources aligned to create. Yeah, there is nothing that comes out of Allison like in terms of like a usable asset. That isn't something we need Allison for, right?
Yeah, and if you speaking about this workflow augmentation, that's exactly what creative teams are looking for. What data points, what elements, what features actually resonates better? How should you incorporate them with a new creative, and then visualization of how it would look like? That's the workflow augmentation. So Bradly and his team, could work weeks on concepts where with a click of a button, Allison will generate a lot of different concepts that are based on real data, competitor data, actual live data from the customer, and basically produce a data-driven approach that is approachable for creative teams that are not analysts and not mathematicians in this way. You want to speak about the...
Yeah, sure. Just to kind of show you guys like at a higher level, like the value that Allison has brought to us on a couple of different titles, right? Like if we look at creatives from a year ago, versus the creatives that we have now coming out of Allison, right? Our CVR has increased 9% year over year, and IPM's 26% year over year. So that's considerable considerable uplift for us, and we'll take whatever we can get in terms of lifts, right? Can we move to the next slide? And then similarly for CSR2, right? We've seen 13% growth in CTR and 48% growth in IPMs over time. So yeah, this is like, Allison is definitely contributing, right, to our creative optimization efforts, making it more efficient, making it more effective, and yeah, just two success stories from two of our titles.
Yeah, and you'll see this in a second right on the platform. So whatever the KPI is, whatever you're measuring, whatever the business goal is, Allison will tune itself in to find the right compositions, the right data points, the right visualization for those specific KPIs. So if Bradly and his team are looking for CTR and IPM uplifts, then Allison would provide the recommendations, the insights, and the visualization around what actually generates IPM and CTR uplift. Other customers that we have are looking at either CPA, reducing the CPA, or increasing revenues. It's exactly the same concept.
Hey, can I mention something really quickly? Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, something that is of equal kind of like, I feel like we've maybe glossed over this, Asaf, is that like I've talked a lot about how Allison can be a powerful tool for creatives. I think for those kind of outfits and setups that do not have the luxury of having a creative team, I think that this tool can be equally as valuable for like media managers and UA managers and stuff like that, to kind of like who actually maybe don't have a creative background, right? Like the tools like Smart Brief and stuff like that actually put the power to pump something out, right? AKA a storyboard, right? Without any kind of, without the need to kind of like have somebody articulate your idea for you. That's what Allison Art can do, you know?
Yeah, it's a good point, because when we work with a lot of smaller studios or linear studios, and instead of outsourcing the productions and outsourcing the creatives, you have to wait a while, you have to do some iterations, it costs a lot of money. So with the Allison platform, and you'll see this right now, but with the click of a button, you have all this process within 30 seconds. So it really augments, you know, and brings the power back to small teams to be as giant as Zynga, even in a way. So as promised, I want to show you a few real examples from the platform. So that's the main dashboard. So you have insights, you have the top tags, so a full visibility towards what's actually working within your different ad accounts and different creatives. We'll show you what are the right tag combinations, what combinations of features you should be actually using in the next videos for increasing ROAS, for increasing CTR, for what's the best combination for a 10-second video, for example, and so on and so forth. And we'll show you trends around what's the trends around this different features and elements that you're using. How's the app logo or your logo, your brand style is behaving throughout, let's say, the past few months. And it's very important, we'll show you the creative opportunities. So this platform works for you, right? Meaning that you don't have to go through all the data points and all the KPIs and analyze each one of the creatives separately, because what happens if you have hundreds or thousands of creatives? It will be almost impossible to identify all those little opportunities. So Allison balances between budget allocation and meeting your business goals. So we'll help you identify where the opportunities are within your creatives, and then not just allocate the budgets accordingly, but act upon it. Also, we build a live creative gallery of each one of your live creatives or pause creative, basically every creative you ever launched or tested. And you can see all the different KPIs and metrics that I was mentioning earlier. You can get a view of the creatives live, regardless of the platform. You have all full funnel metrics for each one of the creatives, even with dynamic ads. So you can see exactly what is the peaks match within this creative and the recommendation. So for every creative, we provide a recommendation for a successful iteration based on a business goal or a KPI. So these are all the features that we have identified within this specific creative. Now, you'll see the recommendation. If you change this CTA from top left side to the top right side, for example, or you change the end card elements, etc., this would generate 50%, 60%, 20% uplift in your main KPI. So if you want to iterate on a creative without A/B testing, that's the perfect tool. Allison will recommend exactly how the iteration should look like in terms of modifications, changes, and updates to an existing creative. Competitors. We didn't speak much about a competitor module, but we have one-of-a-kind, very unique competitor intelligence module. So you can look at every one of your direct competitors' creatives live and see exactly what's working for them, see what tags, what features you've used before. You can, again, see all the creatives live. You can see right here. And we'll surface creatives automatically, even if they were uploaded a few hours ago. So if your competitors are uploading creatives, this would be surfaced automatically within the Allison platform, and you can see exactly all of the different creatives. Like so, you'll see we have 1,400 creatives surfaced by competitors, and you'll see for each one of the creatives all the different metrics, KPIs, and how you're match or how you're compared with your competitors' creatives. And the next thing is exactly what Bradly talked about earlier. How do we take all this magic? How do we take those features, those recommendations, those data points and insights into real life examples that we can actually use both as media or as design and production teams? So this is the smart brief feature that we have. You're looking at the brief itself that contains all of the data points on the left-hand side. We can control the creativity level, meaning we can go bonkers, we can go crazy with our creativity or keep it very mellow and subtle. This is the brief itself. So you can see the target audience, the objective, the tagline, the key messages, the elements that you should be incorporating, the mood and tone, duration, call to action, and even very specific requirements or constraints that typically humans are not really able to identify. And this is the visualization tool, exactly how we can take those features, those insights, and bring them to life. So this is a live storyboard. So we generate a visual image for each one of the scenes together with the script alongside it. So again, you have the story. It's called a storyboard, and it's not here in this demo, but we also generate the live video right now. And Zynga has an early bird access. They're basically one of the new and only customers who are actually using this, yeah. So, few takeaways, and then we can go to a few questions. So, creative innovation. Keep innovating, okay? It's extremely important. As Bradly said, there's a lot of noise going on. There's a lot of repetitions. We should be keeping our innovation minds going. We should be innovating. How do we know how to innovate? Because it's tough, right? Innovating it's not an easy task. So we use AI. AI can really help us with innovation, thinking outside of the box. Second is, how do we tailor creatives? And again, tailor creatives to the right audiences, to the right platforms, to the right placements, and user segments. And again, if we look at the entire spectrum between verticals, platforms, users, placements, and operating systems, we can really find or fine-tune the right creatives with the right messaging. And if you're looking for a data-driven approach, either if you're super savvy and you're used to play around with data, or if you're more of the creative teams that are more artistic and you like to play around with your creative imagination, then you should be incorporating a tool that can balance and bridge the gap between the two. And lastly, I think traditional productions, and Bradly just said it earlier, traditional production is kind of the thing of the past. Okay, going through the traditional production process that take ages, costs a lot of time, a lot of resources. The operation around it is huge. It's not going to work in a hyper-personalized era. It's not going to work in a highly efficient, highly scalable environment. What is working is looking at data, fragmenting it, attributing it to the right features, the right tags, the right audiences and platforms, and then take these data, visualize it, and generate a new creative that would perform far better. Questions? Yeah, go on.
How does the competitor creatives get in there? Do you just say you're interested and it finds them on the web, or do you have to enter them, or how does that all get swept up?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a very unique tool, as I said. Actually, we're the only company in the world that has this capability right now. All you have to do is tell us who your direct competitors are, and from that moment on, we have the intelligence ability to go and crawl and search for all those creatives online. We use multiple different sources. We use the publicly available libraries and other sources to gather all those creatives, benchmark them, and also figure out performance.
How do you know the performance?
That's part of the secret sauce.
But if we don't trust it, then it doesn't matter.
You will trust it, because for us, we didn't go that deep into the data itself, but for us, trust is the most important thing. And if you use AI, there's all, well, at least in the near future, there's going to be trust issues, right? So how do we, as Alison, how do we help you trust the platform? So once you get to know the platform, once you use the platform, you can see exactly why Alison recommended to use this feature, why Alison said, look, this is a creative that's really working well for your competitors. Look, these are the tags that you're missing on, and these are the trends that you're missing on. So part of this trust is by providing all of the raw data that we have, surface it, and visualize it so you can really understand where the insights and recommendations are coming from. Yeah.
And in terms of making recommendations on what to focus on or change, what's the data or the input that led to that? Campaign performance, so you need to run a campaign before, or where is the insight coming from?
So basically, we're getting a read or review access to an ad account, Facebook, Google, TikTok, Snapchat, etc. And from that moment on, we scan all the creatives on this account together with the marketing benchmarks, the performance metrics. Then our AI breaks down the creatives into thousands of elements. You saw features, logos, facial expressions, characters, concepts, themes, rooms, etc. Then we correlate those features with the performance. Once correlated, we can tell you exactly what's driving the performance within your creatives, within the videos, within banners, GIFs, cinemagraphs, and even playable ads. We've experimented with it quite a bit. So that's and we use either top performing metrics or benchmarks within the account to show that our recommendations actually drive better performance. Any other questions? Yeah?
You mentioned the 80-20 split, 80% being for sure, 20% being experimental. Using AI tools, do you see it fitting in one of those buckets more so, or for both?
I think for both, in that like you can use Alison to help you get to your 80% volume for optimizations and following and iterations on stuff that you know works, right? And then I think the Smart Brief tool is like there to kind of like help guide you towards some of those experimental ideas, right? But I also think you need to supplement that with like, you know, human brain, right?
Yeah, with those experimental ideas, or like going into that 20% category, do you feel like the AI is giving you novel stuff, or is it rehashing because it's based off of, you know, math?
I can only speak from experience using the tool, but at least like from the Smart Briefs that we have like selected to produce, whatever that imagery was, right, prompted us to think about a concept a little bit differently, right? Like it didn't just show us something we'd already seen before, just put in the first 2 seconds of the ad, right? There was actually something new or novel or something we haven't been doing, right, that informs that generative suggestion for those first couple frames or all of the frames. But, you know, to be honest with you, like the first couple seconds of your ad is the most important. In fact, like if you just spent your time changing out the first 5 seconds of your ads, you're not going to be far away from seeing like drastically better performance, right? Like most people, I think that it's around the statistic, I think, I'm not sure exactly what it is now, but it's around 80 to 85% of people have either dismissed your ad or have decided to install after 5 seconds. Yeah, that's pretty true. That's like a kind of something we've seen over and over again, right?
And by the way, Bradly and Zynga influenced a lot about how we look at the different parts of the video. For example, the opening scene, the hook, and the end card, and we can provide detailed recommendations for each one of those. So for example, if you want to make sure that your first 5 seconds are spot on and you're actually maximizing your user engagement, then you can tweak the platform and say, okay, what are the recommendations for the opening scene for my next video, for example? That's one. But also answering your creativity question. So we've learned that creativity is a spectrum, right? Not all of us think about creativity in the same way. For us, for some of us, creativity is, or being creative is doing what we know and what we think we know, and for some of us, it's going completely crazy. So I showed it earlier, but we've built this spectrum within our platform to help balance or help go completely bonkers, completely crazy, with crazy ideas, innovative ideas, full-on creativity, or let's just keep the data that we have and let's stick to the data, but still be a little bit creative with the data that we have. So there's a big spectrum, and Alison really helps you balance between this spectrum. And another thing that I think not a lot of people are aware of is how we look at competitors and how we look at a market. So we also have a built-in tool that says, okay, I know everything around my ad account, but I know nothing about my competitors. With a click of a button, you can generate a new brief, a new concept, a new storyboard based on your market, based on your competitors. And then you can see the differences between how your creatives, how your storyboards, how your data points actually look like in comparison to your competitors. More like a gap analysis, but a visualized gap analysis. So I just said we don't have it here in this video clips, but we are already generating the full-on video, and it's not just a full-on video, it's a commercially ready video. That means that it's not just a raw footage, it's an ad. It has your brand tone, your brand guidelines, your logos, your messaging, disclaimers, everything that you used in your previous ads will also be generated within the new ad. No, it's live. The team is already using it. Yeah.
Pretty great, except that like we're not really able because of the whole generative thing. So it still serves as like a proof of concept animatic, right? So we really, you know what I mean? It's like we get the concept where it saves a lot of time, right? In terms of like the ideation, the kind of like whatever the back and forth that you know precious creative people want to have around publishing their ideas, right? But yeah, it's kind of like we still have to make, right?
A lot of other companies, they do use the ready-made video as their ad. That's it. Feedback loop closed in 30 seconds from analysis, competitor insight, benchmarking, insights, brief, storyboard, and a ready-made commercially ready video in 30 seconds. That's what when we say augmenting the entire creative workflow, that's exactly what we're aiming for. And we're just getting started, by the way. There's a lot of new tricks and new things that we are working on. For example, looking at even in the beginning of the funnel, before we even launch creatives, before we even launch campaigns, before we even launch our first creative, how do we test it without testing it? If you know what I mean. How do we test it without spending a single dollar? Or how do we test a creative without spending man hours and manpower on productions, on iterations, etc.? And these are the things that we are working on and should be live within a few quarters. Cool. Thank you very much. Been a pleasure.
Thanks, everybody.